but one of the issues that we have is manpower right now, and we're struggling just like everybody else. But one issue we see out there a lot on these jobs is unlicensed people doing work. So do we have anything in place to check to make sure these are some pretty low bids in that neighborhood when it comes to the electrical and it comes to the mechanical that I'm pretty familiar with.
Well, and a lot of that was part of the general conditions, which I know.
I know their general condition. What I would ask is that we ourselves go on those jobs and make sure that we are a learning institution, and we believe in education, and we want the most highly skilled, qualified people doing the work out there. And we want to make sure, it's state law that they have to be either a state license for plumbing or electrical, a state licensed plumber or electrician, or a state registered apprentice to an apprenticeship program. And I can almost assure you, those contractors do not. I go on non-union jobs. I go on those jobs of those contractors every day. And so I just want, I'm not going to argue union, non-union. I'm going to argue qualified people doing the job. I would just ask you yourself, don't believe a general contractor.
I understand.
Walk up to a guy and say, let me see your plumber license, or let me see your electrical license, because those bids, and I know the labor shortage that's out there, they just don't have the manpower. And so I think we need to be watching that so that we make sure that the work that's going in is right.
Okay.
So thank you.
To Mr. Drew's point, what's our action or remedy if we get on site, someone's awarded the bid, we find out they're using non-licensed work?
Again, that's spelled out in the general, kind of conditions that we place on there, and we monitor that, and we kind of, in order to kind of track to make sure the work's done. Obviously when they do the work, there's people who are verifying it, and as it goes through, to make sure it's up to what we want. Yeah.
I did, maybe this is the wrong form. Maybe I should do it in a building committee, and I can do that, Phil, if you want, but I struggle again for the last 12 years of my career doing this, and many of us have, and we've tried to get to school boards and to city councils to tell them about the issues that are out there. And it doesn't always get to you. So that's to your point, just please ask those people, because there's a lot of, just ask.
Yeah. No,
And make sure they have it. I don't know the remedy. The remedy, I've seen a lot of contracts, but the remedy, if they have if they don't have the proper qualifications out there, I would like to know what does the contract spell out? That is what happens then?
Yeah. So, and Corey's here, she's taking notes, so if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so my understanding would be that Barton Mallow, so when they're putting all of these bids together, it's all part of their general conditions. Contrast is on site now. They're doing phase 1. They've also done work for us as a district as well. They are licensed. So when at least the people I've worked with, when they come in to do mechanical work for us, and it's been a while since I've had them here, but we've always asked for mechanical license when they come out. But as far as, the bond work goes, I would heavily rely on our construction managers, and we can pose that question to Barton Mallow as well. But that's who we would, rely on to make sure that those people are coming in licensed.
And to both of their points, my concern would be that with our tight schedule, we'd end up with some kind of work stoppage, because your concerns are valid, and we've got someone here who's not supposed to be doing what they're doing. That holds up the rest of our trades that are behind them. So I completely understand John's concern there.
Yeah, Corey, and I'm not, this is not a shot against any of you guys, and you guys have done this for years, and I just, it's a ongoing problem, and it's become even bigger because of the labor shortage that's out there that we all know about. And when it comes to the construction trades, but it's an easy way to cut a lot of labor costs by having unskilled people out there who are, I've been on a job multiple jobs in this area where the guy will even tell me he was working at Bob Evans the week before and now he's out there plumbing. And some will think, yeah, okay, they might have a mechanical license as a company, or they might have a plumbing license, contractor license as a company. But every person on that job, and some general contractors will tell you, as long as I have one master plumber, the rest of them don't, it doesn't matter. No. State law, state plumbing law, the problem is there's not enough inspectors to go around. But every person out there has to be a state licensed plumber or a state registered apprentice. All of our apprentices get registered every year. The same for electricians. And they have to be in an approved apprenticeship program. And I would just think as a learning institution, and as you said, I mean, I understand there's timelines to keep, but let's make sure we're picking contractors to, and I'm not saying nothing about contrast, I'm not saying anything about any particular company. I just want to make sure we're doing what we need to out there, so.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll follow through on that.
Any other questions? Okay. Next item is hearing of the public. I don't have any submissions for tonight. So we'll move on to communications.
No communications.
Next item is the consent agenda. Tonight's consent agenda consists of the approval of minutes from the November 15th regular meeting, as well as the November 15th special meetings, the personnel report, the financial report, and the bills payable for November of 23. So is there a motion to approve of the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make the motion.
Their support?
I'll support.
And then any discussion? Okay, go ahead and call roll.
All right, Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Ms. Knox, yes, Ms. Brookmeyer,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Richards,
Yes.
Mr. Drew,
Yes.
Mr. Vendatelli.
Yes.
Next we'll move into new business. So we have first our first budget amendment.
Good evening, Board. So tonight we are here to present the First Amendment to our 23-24 school year budget. If I could have you go to the first slide. Next slide, I should say. So this is a high-level view of the budget, including the starting with that first column, we have our actual audited from the 22-23 school year. The next column over in yellow is the original budget that was approved back on June 21st of 2023. In the third column, we have the amended budget that we'll be discussing and presenting tonight. And then the final column is the variance between the original budget and the amended budget. And we will speak to each of those variances as we move through the presentation. On this particular page, I'd like to draw attention a little bit to some of the high-level numbers. You can see back in June of 2023, we had approved total revenues of about $76 million. We've added in the amendment about $3.6 million to the budget. And we'll go through and talk a little bit about that. If you look at the total expenditures, we've added almost a little over $4 million to the budget from the original. And again, we'll talk about how that happened. But as you go down those two columns, you can see that at the beginning of the year for the 23-24 school year original budget, we're projecting an ending fund balance of about $10.9 million or 14.57%. You can see for the amended budget that we're presenting tonight, we're projecting revenues of about $11.6 million and a 14.64% fund balance. So with that, we'll move into the next page, our next slide, I should say. So you can see there, we'll talk a little bit about some of these variances. If you focus on that last column, the variance, you can see the difference in our local sources. We went from about $7.5 million up to about 8.2 million. Those consist of a number of things, property tax increases. We're projecting a little bit more in interest earnings because of the interest rates that are out there right now. But the vast majority of that comes from an claim that we had, if you'll recall, we had some water damage at the high school and some of our elementary schools. We received about $422,000 in insurance reimbursement for those damages. And so that's really the lion's share of that $671,000 increase. For our state sources, you can see those increased by about $3.6 million. You remember in our original budget, we had budgeted to be down about 100 students. It turned out to be far less than that. It was about 16 students that were down. So that's a large percent of the increase there. We also have included in the update or in the amendment a district transportation grant that we're receiving for $755,000. There's an educator compensation incentive for $276,000 that we've included. CTE equipment grant that we received for $105,000. And then we've also received some more money that will pass through for our retirement for MIPSers. So we're getting about $1.2 million than we originally budgeted. Again, that's an in and an out. So we'll see that again in the expenses as well. But those are the increases for our state. And then our federal resources, we see there that those went down about $583,000. Vast majority of that is we spent a little bit more of our ESSER and 11T monies in 22-23 than we plan on spending in 23-24. 23-24 is the last year to use up the remainder of our ESSER money and our 11T money. So we intend to do that, but we're just budgeting a little bit less. So that's kind of the major highlights for the revenues. If there's no questions, I'll proceed to expenditures. Flipping to the, thank you very much for the next slide. So you can, same format. The yellow is the original budget. The blue column, the third column there is the amended budget. So you can see, I'll start with the instruction. You can see there's an increase there of about $1.6 million. That's a number of things going in there that we had. So we gave our buildings an increase in their building budgets for the first time in, I don't know, decades, possibly. So we've given our buildings a little bit more for them to use at their building level, about $159,000, I believe there, or $156,000, sorry. Then we've also added some of those grants that we talked about in the revenue side. So the educator compensation incentive of $276,000. We talked about the CTE equipment grant, and we talked about some of the other things that we've added, an elementary science teachers. So we've got those specials. We've added 4 teachers in those regards. And so you can see there that we've increased the spending on our instruction, which is a good thing. That's where we want the vast majority of our dollars to be. We also have some increased spending on support services for our pupils. That would be additional counselors, social workers. We've added behavioral specialists and some speech pathologists. So that's the increase there. Kind of moving down a little bit to the operations. That's an increase of just under $900,000. You can see a big piece of that includes our security. So we've added some Fortis guards, and that has increased our costs in that particular category. We've also added some money for the insurance claims. Like we talked about, we had some insurance costs that I should say some damage from the flooding and so forth that we received insurance proceeds. We also budgeted for those increased expenditures due to the flood damage. So you can see there for $435,000. And then we've added some to our operational budget, about $175,000. We've added some to our HVAC, and Corey talked, or maybe Phil talked about, I guess, earlier tonight. We're going to do some LVT in some of the areas at Great Oaks where we had some flooding. We received some insurance, but we're going to use a little bit more of our general fund money to supplement that, to put in luxury vinyl tile that will save us a lot of time and effort. So that's really the increases that you see there. We had some increases to our other support services in the way of athletics. So there's been a number of capital outlay items that we really need to address, porta pits, other things, ice machines. And we've talked about this, I think, in the past. We're looking to add some portable restrooms that we'll be able to set up near the ball fields. So that's a little bit of that. And then finally, on our outgoing transfers, I want to talk a little bit about that because you can see there we've got an increase of about $545,000, and that's pretty significant. You'll remember that we purchased some property, and that lease agreement was signed in July of 2023, about 3 weeks or so after we approved our original budget. So that's why it was not included in the original budget. But that's the increase of about $545,000. And really what we're doing there is we're swapping assets, really. I mean, it's cash for land. So we're just swapping out one asset for another. Flipping to the next page, you can see there that we have a little bit of you can see, I want to point out first, going back to 11-12, you can see that, we're way down at 0.44%, came back up in 2015-16 to about 11.29. And then in 2019, big drip slid back down to just under 3%. So since then, obviously we're under Treasury's overwatch. We've come out of that and we've come back real strong. We are targeting to be at 15%. We don't want to be much above that. You can see there that we ended last year at about 14.78%. And this year we're proposing that we'll be at 14.64. That might initially look like a step back, but if you'll recall, we had a pretty significant increase, about $4 million on our expenditures. So what we're doing is we're putting our fund balance as the numerator, our expenses as the denominator. So as that denominator gets bigger, it'll cause potentially our percent of fund balance to go down. So if we flip to the next page, you'll actually see though that we are projecting an actual increase to our fund balance. So you can see there in 22-23, we're at just over $11.1 million. In 23-24, we're projecting to be at 11.6. So we're adding about $500,000 to our fund balance, but because we've added $4 million to our expenses, it makes it look like that percentage is dipped down a little bit. So as we've talked about in the past, and we've discussed, I know in committees, I know we've discussed this at the board level, we really think 15% is about where we need to be in order to do a couple of the things that we have listed there. Reduce or relieve our cash flow borrowing. We believe at 15%, we will be able to avoid that. And with the higher interest rates, it's really become more of a impact on our budget than it has in the past when interest rates were so low. It also provides resources for unforeseen expenditures and allows us to really quickly address any academic initiatives with the proper resources. So we can do that. We don't have to, say, well, maybe in a couple of years when we have the funds to do it, we can do it, because we do have the funds now to do those kind of things. So with that, go to the next slide. I would take any questions from the board that you have at this point in time on the amendment that we're presenting tonight.
I'll open it up for questions.
Hearing none, I'll wrap it up.
I'll ask one real quick.
Okay.
On the CT equipment, can you talk about what that equipment is going to be, or?
Yeah, it worked out really well for us. We, with our addition and that Phil was talking about tonight, and I believe it's phase 2, that we're going to redo a lot of our health OC rooms. And what we plan on doing with that $105,000 grant that we received is purchasing an animatage table. So what is an animatage table? Well, It's a table that essentially you look down on and it has a video, it kind of provides a video of a person's anatomy, essentially. So you can look at a human's anatomy on the table and you can do different things to manipulate that
Virtual
anatomy.
dissection table, basically.
Yeah, so it's a pretty cool piece of equipment. I think it's new to us for sure. We're still working out how to pronounce that Anamitage table, but I think it's gonna be really a cool thing for our Health Doc program for sure.
And it's something we had budgeted in the bond, but now we get the grant from the state, so that will free up.
Yeah,
money.
so that's 105 that we're saving out of our
Yeah.
bond. Yep. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So with that, the recommendation is that we approve the general fund budget amendments for the 23-24 school year. Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion amongst the board?
Oh, I just had one thing. So what I'm hearing is we're on time, we're financially healthy right now. Everything's on track, right?
Yeah, I think
Is that
so,
what I'm
you know.
hearing? Okay.
Hundreds, if not thousands of assumptions go into
Sure,
all
yeah.
of these budgets. So we know, and I probably should have said this from the outset. We know that there are still a number of grants that we are in the middle of application for, that we expect to be awarded that were not necessarily included in this because we just don't have enough information to really provide any sort of reasonable estimate of what we think those will be. So we have not included those, but there's probably at least $1 million+ of grants that we believe that we will qualify for yet this year, that are not included in the budget tonight, again, because we don't have a reasonable estimate of what those might be. So as we get those, of course, we will share those with the board and incorporate those into our final amendment that we present in June.
Yeah, I'm just asking for people at home who don't, we
Yeah.
get to sit with this information. We see it a lot. We get to talk to you,
Yeah.
one-on-one
and-
when we need to, and Mr. Jankowski as well. So just
But
a good
to more-
thumbs up. at
Yes,
home.
to more directly answer your question, I feel like, yes, we are in a good financial position. Our stated goal, and we've always talked about this, is to be right around 15%. If we're going above that, we want to use those funds to reinvest back into the school, and make sure that we're providing as many opportunities for our students as we can.
Thank you, Ted. Go ahead. Okay. Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue,
Yes.
Mr. Vendatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Richards,
Yes.
Ms. Bergmeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Knox, yes.
Next item of business is the Chesterfield Election Invoice Challenge. So I know Mr. Jankowski and I have talked about this quite a bit, but basically, do you want to explain or you want me to?
That's fine.
So the board has received an invoice, as we would expect to receive, from Chesterfield Township regarding the November 7th, 2023 election costs. Since we were the only item on the ballot, we would expect to incur some costs to that, running that election. However, the total reimbursement presented to us was $47,054.30. Long story short, the district, we wish to appeal part of those ballot costs, as some of that was compensation paid to regular township employees, not even special election employees, overtime wages, which we believe is not something they can bill us for. Voting tabulation, annual equipment costs that were passed on to us, things that are normally, used in an election, as we believe that we are only required to be billed for additional costs associated with our election. So we are currently in discussion with our council, but would be looking to disapprove portions of the total invoice that we received from Chesterfield. So the recommendation from Mr. Jankowski and I is that we take the necessary steps to appeal the invoice from Chesterfield Township regarding the special election that was November 7th. So I need to have a motion to open it up for discussion.
I will make the motion to appeal the invoice of $47,054.30 received from Chesterfield Township surrounding the election that took place in November.
I'll second it.
The support?
Yeah, support.
Okay, so I can open the floor for discussion amongst the board. Questions, comments, concerns?
So I've actually got a couple of notes that I took yesterday and then I chatted with Todd today. And just some things that I want to make sure are out there on the record. Of the 47,000, that actually is about 10 times the amount that Lennox Township charged us for providing those same services. And I realized that Chesterfield is significantly bigger than Lennox, but at some point there's fixed expenses and variable expenses, and fixed expenses paying for the machine, putting it here, and then the variable expense would obviously be labor to staff locations. But Chesterfield has 19 precincts and we utilized 8 of them in the vote. Because obviously I think Chesterfield actually has Lance Cruz and actually has New Haven schools, if I'm remembering correctly. 3 of the 8 were actually at Green Elementary, which is a Lance Cruz school. So they had 3 of their precincts working out of a non-Anchor Bay elementary, and whether Lance Cruz charged Chesterfield Township for that, Todd might be able to answer that, because I would expect I know he's been asking for some backup to the invoice. And certainly if Lance Cruz had sent a bill to Chesterfield to use Green Elementary for 3 of their 8 precincts, I would have expected to see a bill. But to Lisa's point, reimbursable costs include costs associated with the production of ballots, postage, supplies. It's going to get really boring too now. Equipment rental costs, wages for inspectors and canvassers, and extra duty compensation or overtime worked. And Ms. Burkmeyer already mentioned it. I don't believe, sitting on the finance committee and after doing some research, that we should be paying for straight time for employees that were already reporting to work on that particular Tuesday in November. Certainly, if there's overtime attached to setting these precincts up and tearing them down, we should pay that. But I don't think we should be paying regular duty wages for employees that are just coming to work on a regularly scheduled day. Reimbursable costs do not include reusable equipment or supplies, new equipment, costs customary to regular course of business. And as I already mentioned, compensation paid to employees. Part of what we were charged was a little more than $9,000 for a service contract to service voting equipment. And that service contract actually runs from May of 23 to April of 24. I don't believe that we agreed as a board to put this initiative on our ballot, that happened before November of 23. So 5 or 6 months prior to us to even agreeing that we were going to have a ballot initiative, they signed a service agreement, and now they're passing that entire service agreement cost on to us. Is there a prorated portion? Sure. I probably don't know enough about how voting machines work, and the clerk, if she were here, could probably fill us in a little bit more. But the bill at 47,000 is, to me, I was having lunch with somebody today, a person locally involved with elections, not a clerk in either of the areas that we're in, and she was appalled when I said 47,000. She said, if you're paying more than $10,000, you guys have lost your minds. There's no way that money should be being passed on to us. So I didn't have all of this stuff. Todd and I spoke after that lunch meeting, but in my position and from what I was told at finance yesterday, and you guys that were at finance can certainly speak up yesterday, we got some further in-depth details, and Todd and Robin are requesting backup documents to this, probably what is just amounts to a simple Excel spreadsheet of pay. And we're not going to pay charges for, to run an election that essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, if we didn't run this, we would have lost about $6 million in revenue from the federal government. Am I saying that right?
No, it'd be local. It'd be local
Okay.
revenue because it was our.
So we
operating
have to run
budget.
this, and it's been in effect since 1994. Fortunately, it passed. And as someone who actually has to pay the extra 18 mils on multiple properties, Anchor Bay School District, I can tell you, shame on Chesterfield for sending us a bill that's this egregious. And in my opinion, if we lost $6 million in revenue, where's that going to come from? Now we start talking about housing values and, you know, people and businesses moving into the community. And again, some expense is reasonable, not 47,000. I can do a lot of things for 47,000. So again, as Todd's working through and trying to figure out what, in my opinion, appears to be a legitimate, rational expense tied to what we did as a board, that's great, but I fully support, you know, an appeal to wherever that ends up. And I am the last person that wants to spend taxpayer money on paying attorneys, because that's not what we're here for. We're here to, you know, to educate kids and put them in safe, solid buildings. And paying attorney fees doesn't do that for me, and that annoys me more than anything. But I'm also not about just paying money because we simply got a bill. And I appreciate that you guys are holding your hand up to say, board, we need some support here because we're not sure that this bill is accurate. Thank you.
Couple things I would add as well in my conversation with Mr. Jankowski that kind of stuck out to me for the public's understanding was an additional invoice as well for, I believe some of the items on the invoice were like recall petitions,
Yes.
things of that nature. This invoice that was passed on to us was dated for a date, I believe in May, which was before we had even decided to run for decided as a board to have an election. So again, you can't really make the argument that those things were necessary for our election when you didn't know our election was going to occur. And on top of it, even once you do know our election is going to occur, it's not something that would require recall petitions or anything like that. So these things are not even in the scope of anything that went on for the November election. To me, they come across as run-of-the-mill things that Chesterfield needs to have on hand for regular larger elections that revolve around Chesterfield or, you know, federal and state elections. But that struck me as, you know, to pass on to the public as an explanation as to why we are kind of picking apart some of these charges, because they really don't make sense to us. Additionally, there was one other thing I was going to bring up.
While you're gathering that, I just want to make sure that everyone knows that the reason we got the bill is because Chesterfield had no other initiatives on their ballot, where New Baltimore had a mayoral race, city council. They may have had something else on there, maybe a bond, I'm not sure. You know, stuff exited a month ago when I voted. But Chesterfield didn't have anything else on their ballot, and that's why essentially we're getting, you know, billed for close to $50,000 is.
And to put it into
Reelection.
reference, because I know, you know, Chesterfield is much larger than Lenox, but we had spoke and I believe it was the city of Warren.
Mhm.
Obviously much larger than Chesterfield. Only charges Warren Con, what was it?
It's between like 10 and 15,000.
10 and 15,000 for the city of Warren, which is obviously much larger, not split and using another, necessarily using another school district even as precincts. So to me, if you only have to charge Warren consolidated 10, 15,000, our 45 looks really ridiculous. And I really hate, and I think it sounds like we have fair agreement, somewhat agreement on this board already, but I think this just sets a precedent. We won't be walked over. And if you're going to charge us 45,000 for this, I don't know what's going to happen the next time we really want a bond or anything else on the election. And I just, honestly, even as a resident of Chesterfield, I'm appalled, frankly.
No, and just another thing to kind of, we do not charge them for, when they use their buildings, we do not charge them for like the usage of the buildings, the cleaning, the anything like that as well. So we've always had this partnership. So that's part of the thing that kind of sticks out here is we've worked with them. We arrange our calendar around the election days in order to make that happen. So what this will do now, if approved by the board, we then send them a letter, and then we have to sit down and we kind of hash over all of that. If there's still a dispute, then it goes to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State will then decide what's allowable.
I didn't realize Chesterfield's hurting so much for revenue. It's amazing. You know, I'm appalled. I thought we were building, having a better relationship with, some of these townships and things like that. And, to Patrick's point, when this came up during the meeting, it was shocking. I know we've mentioned, Ira Township and Lennox and the other communities that had it, and even New Baltimore. I understand there's a mayor race and whatnot, but I think even that bill was $6,000 or $7,000. So it's I'm glad I don't live in Chesterfield.
And it's also, Mr. Richards, important to note, we didn't go out and run a May or an August vote. I don't consider what we did off cycle, just because they didn't have a race going on. That doesn't really, quite honestly, concern me, because I'm here about the school district, not about what's happening in Chesterfield Township. So we didn't do anything that was completely, take all of their resources and suck them in on a random August day, as opposed to, in November on election day. That's obviously well planned for 20 years from now. You can figure out when the election day is. So I guess I've beaten that horse enough now.
So new to this, but, and I agree with you guys. I mean, if that's not run of the mill or not, what is, first off though, was anybody question them when they gave it to you?
Yes.
Did you guys talk to them?
Yeah.
And they didn't, there was no
They-
willingness to talk?
No,
Well, do
the-
you want to share the comment that was? given to
Well,
you?
the basic discussion
Put you on the
was that,
spot.
well, these are allowable because they're taking, let's just say they're taking a broader view of what's allowed, because whatever is the next election. So anything they had to do to prepare for the next election, ours just happened to be that. So therefore we bear the brunt of the cost, like the biennial maintenance thing. They had to update those machines anyhow. And they would, whether we had an election or not. So technically, that's not an added cost, because you had, for any election, they had to do that. So again, there should be a prorated part. They do not feel that that's necessarily the case. And again, in relation to the amount, because it's $6 million a year over the 10 years of that non-homestead. And so there was something, well, kind of, why are you complaining when you're getting all this money and this is a drop in the bucket kind of compared to that? And no, I mean, you look at every other, so there's 4 jurisdictions that we had, and they kind of went by what's pretty much been standard, just added costs. So you're doing this, it's over and above, and that's what they kind of charge us at. And then this one was just so kind of exorbitant with things like, again, there wasn't a recall, there wasn't any partisan. So we paid for partisan and nonpartisan petitions. We paid for recalls, we paid for petitions, we paid for a bunch of things that weren't even on the ballot for our thing. So that's.
But was this a decision made by the clerk alone or a decision made by?
Well, yeah, they're,
Before we start saying I am appalled by Chesterfield, I'm appalled by all these people. Who made this decision?
well, it was
To
by
not work it
by
out.
their election office. That's
So it was the
basically what
clerk.
they had. Yeah, so that
Okay.
would,
The
So
clerk's office.
I guess first that.
so we
'cause-
did communicate with them
Yeah,
on that, and then we
okay.
told them that this is what we we're going to do. And again, so.
Well, I just don't want Chesterfield to get, we're sitting here tonight saying that, and
Yeah.
if there wasn't a conversation for that. Another thing is, because again, I'm good with we go and try to negotiate this thing, but I run an election just of my union hall, and we have 1,500 total possible people. And I mean, I bid it out as much as I could, Pat, and I don't know who you talk to, but just for an election of that, it's 10 grand. And that's just 1,500 people at one location, 2 voting booths. So 47,000 to me outside of the gate as for an election just for us doesn't seem like a lot. Now, what you're saying, when you're saying we're paying for recall petitions, and I'm all in. I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
it more. That's all. And I just don't want to
Yeah.
beat
If you-
down all
if
of
you think about
Chesterfield if
it-
it's one person making this call.
If you think
Yeah.
about it,
So
had
good
we
luck.
not
Yeah.
had we not run our item on the ballot, they still, like, to your point, they still would have had to pay to update their machines by the
But I
next
think
year. They
after-
still would have paid for
But I-
forms and whatnot that they
But those
ordered.
machines need to be updated after every election. So if they didn't have an election,
No,
they
this
wouldn't,
is-
right? They wouldn't have to
I
update them?
actually spoke to the company that did the work, and I said, no, this is your biennial update. We do.
Oh,
we do all that. So you're good for basically, now there might be
Okay.
other things, like if you have firmware that you have to, but you would have had to done.
Anyways,
And not only that, it was done before we even called for the election.
okay, hey, game on. But again, I just look at it as it
Right, I
looks
don't
like it's
know,
one
Yeah.
I
person that
don't
made
know the
this call.
scope of
Yeah.
what Chesterfield's board, as a
Yeah.
whole knows, and how much that gets shared. I don't know. But yeah, I
Perfect.
will stand
Thank
by
you.
that I'm appalled by this bill.
Just curious, do we know if they're using I think it's the DS-200 voting machine?
That I
Okay.
don't know. We didn't, I mean, it is on the one invoice, so it tells you whatever the model numbers are, but I don't know.
Not to be too much of a show off. No,
Yeah.
not to be, so I was a chairperson for the
Yeah.
Warren elections at precinct 40 or something like that. We use DS-200. I'm wondering, so if Warren used the same machines, they should have the same costs, and maybe we could sort of check to reference that to see if, that's above and beyond what they're charging us for, if they have a process for that. I mean, I think that's pretty well set in stone, what the costs were, just the fact of the timing of when they did that in the first place, but just something I think to kind of consider in that case.
Yeah.
Well, for 47,000, we should have someone at the end of the phone to call. So
Somebody should sit down with
Yeah.
I don't
so-
know how far Todd and Robin have gotten with that. They've got a stack of documents, so it's not like Chesterfield doesn't know that we put our hand up and said, "Oh, hold on, let's talk about this." And the gist that I got, because Phil's being political and I'm not, is that I don't feel like we made much progress with getting, I mean, Todd has a stack of documents this big that we're trying to comb through. So I don't know, can I go to the Secretary of State and back charge some wages for my accounting department when she determines that we don't have to pay this? It's the same difference as billing me. I got better things for those guys to do than,
What are you talking
We'll
about?
argue
On a
invoices.
stack of paperwork.
so Todd has requested backup documents to this invoice. Show me what goes into the $9,000 charge that we sustained for the maintenance of the machines or the updating. So when we're sitting in finance, he didn't get into them because what he's doing is incomplete and he didn't feel comfortable doing it, but it's this tall of documents that tie to this $47,000 bill. Time sheets, time records, employee time sheets. I'm like, holy cow. So I guess my question was just, if I'm going to drop, $4,000 or $5,000 on attorney fees, attorney opinions, which we're already paid for, and 2 or 3 or 4 of my employees, when I lose this, are they going to pay me back for that? When I win this, I'm sorry, when I win, because I don't think we're ever going to have to end up paying this 47,000, but we're spending resources to do something that shouldn't have been done in the first place, in my opinion.
Yeah,
That's what I'm getting to.
I guess what surprises, oh, sorry.
I can just give you a quick rundown because I know it was included in your board packet, but so here are all the entities that we had so it was Macomb County, St. Clair County, Ira Township, Lennox Township, and Chesterfield. So Macomb County, $4,600, okay, total. St. Clair County, $2,800 total. Ira Township, $2,600 total. Lennox Township, $4,200 total. Chesterfield, $47,000.
Yeah, I get the board packet, Phil. What I'm talking about is the conversations being
Yeah.
had between us and Chesterfield. Has anybody talked to the supervisor? I guess I'll just ask you.
Yes, that's,
And he
I
hasn't-
started there and then he connected me to them.
Okay.
And so we had that discussion then.
That's interesting.
Then they said that we'd kind of look and maybe they come back, because I said, again, if we're gonna prorate it, you have to
Yeah.
do this anyhow, the maintenance.
I mean, before we start getting, like you just said, into lawyers and
And they said,
and
basically, we did this, well, yeah, I mean, there won't really be kind of going forward. It's just basically, we're gonna sit down and say, here's the things. And then if they still believe that those can be charged, then we just take it to the Secretary of State and then they'll decide.
it just seems, looking at it, the budget of Anchor Bay, the budget of Chesterfield Township, we're sitting here squabbling over 47,000 when we have an agreement. We're working together at Sugar Bush. We're working together for almost every election. It's like, we probably talked about it too long tonight now, but it's just like, wow. I
I
can't
hate it
believe
too.
that
John, I
two
hate it too.
people can't sit down in a room and say, hey, we don't agree. We'd like to be at this avenue. You're a pretty skillful guy.
Yeah, no.
Their supervisor's a pretty skillful guy. I think
I-
you guys can figure this out.
When we called that, we gave them they said, well, we'll rethink that. We'll get back to you. And then, but we also have timelines that we have to kind of follow through. And so that's why we're doing this. This just makes it so they have to now sit down with us. They can't just, and then we'll do that. And again, we'll try and resolve at that point. We don't want to go past that.
And I don't want to damage our relationship.
I really hope we don't have to
Yeah.
go to the Secretary of State for this.
No, so do I. We don't, this is the last thing that we wanted, after we were passed, we're like, okay, we're good for another 10 years on this one. We'll, and then here we are.
Madam President, I think Todd may have a comment.
So we have a motion. The recommendation is that the board formally take approve the motion for necessary steps to appeal the invoice presented by Chesterfield for the November 7th election. Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue,
Yes.
Mr. Vendatelli,
Yes.
Mr. Richards,
Yes.
Ms. Bergmeyer,
Yes,
Ms. Knox, yes.
motion passes. Next item would be the award recommendations for Phase 2 of the high school bond. So the board received the bid package attached, and Mr. Jankowski had kind of gone through that in his update. So the recommendation is that the board award the high school additions and renovations for Phase 2 in the amount of $4,458,665.79 as presented by Mr. Jankowski and in your bid package that the board had received. Is there a motion for the award recommendation?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
I too shall support getting $4 million of work done. I didn't mean to say giving away. That's not the right term.
Yes.
All right, any further discussion?
Is there, going back to what I was talking about earlier, and I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I've ever just hit this something thought of, and back in the day, they used to do this. Is there a way to attach to these motions and to any contract going forward, really, when it comes to licensing and of licensed trades, that they must provide proof of that license and have a copy of it to the school?
Again, and Corey can kind of jump on that. I believe
'Cause
that was part of the general conditions that we had you guys review, remember?
It's not part of the general conditions. I've read many. And it says, yes, well, I guess I'll say this, that what's part of it is, yes, it's gonna be, the work's gonna be done according to all state rules and regulations and all that. But I'm here to tell you with personal proof on multiple jobs of contractors that we're about to hire,
Well,
of unlicensed people and unlicensed, I'm
it was
not,
not spelled out in the bid, I guess I would
Yeah.
tell you that. I mean, we just had, again, those conditions that they have to follow, by the state. and-
Right,
and
from what
all
I'm
those guidelines.
understanding, you're saying that state law that everybody be licensed and
Yeah,
the general terms are that you follow state law and
Mhm.
licensing. So in that sense, it should be able to be
and
upheld.
I'm telling you.
No, I understand what you're
I'm
saying.
not telling you, I'm
no,
I
just-
understand what
yeah,
you're
yeah,
saying,
yeah.
absolutely.
I'm
I'm
just
just saying, I
frustrated
think
with,
at this point on this one.
we
you-
should be able to hold them to that because
Yeah.
it is state law
You-
and
you're
that
saying
they're
include that
supposed to abide
license.
by that.
Include that license with their bid or proof of the license.
so years ago, what they would do, different cities and townships would say, if you're gonna do work in our township, back when they had enough enforcement, they would say, you're gonna check your license at the township and you'd pay $5 and they just make a copy of your license. It's just an added step to put to people to make sure they're using qualified workers. And it's something we could do here. And we could set the standard to say, we're gonna make sure we have qualified people doing our work. Because I can tell you on other school districts, because I've done it, where I've gone to the school board and showed them pictures of the work that was put in wrong and the work that was, subpar. I'm not saying they're gonna do that here, but I want to make sure that we're protected. And we're putting a lot of money into these buildings, a lot of taxpayer money, including our money. And I just want to make a serious point to this because I know the contractors on those lists and I know what they do. And I know them intimately. And that's all. And what they'll do is they'll put licensed guy theirs for a week.
It
And
wasn't
then
spelled
they'll-
out specifically in this bit. It was just in, like, again, under the state law and guidelines. and
Okay.
all of that.
I'm just making a,
So at this point on this one, I don't think it really can without having to rebid the whole thing.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
Ms. Berkmeyer,
Yes.
Mr. Richards,
Yes.
Mr. DeRue,
no,
Mr. Vinatelli,
Yes.
Ms. Knox, yes.
Okay. So we'll move to board comments, points of pride. Mr. Richards, you want to lead off?
Sure, I'll lead off. If you're looking for some Anchor Bay gear for Christmas gift, the Nautical School Store has some extended hours Thursday and Friday of this week, as well as Monday through Wednesday next week. I wear a large, just. Yeah, large. Congratulations to Kendall Ahern from Varsity Competitive Cheerleading. She is the Student of the Month for November. Coach Crop states, "It is only the beginning of winter sports season and Kendall is already a 3-sport athlete. She competed in varsity girls swim, varsity sideline cheer in the same season while maintaining a 3.4 GPA. Anchor Bay High School is lucky to have her." I'd like to thank the HOSA Club students that kicked off Strive for a Safer Drive at the Chesterfield Township Tree Lighting. Thank you for your continued support of making Michigan roadways safer. Congratulations to middle school SALT students of the month that had breakfast at the Shoreliner December 7th. Keep up the good work. The Anchor Bay High School Comfort Closet is now accepting donations of new or gently used clothing for teens. Congratulations to Max Reese, Anchor Bay High School Student Athlete of the Month. Max's coach says that the young athlete goes above and beyond of being an outstanding athlete in a sport. He has donated equipment to athletes that were new to bowling as well. Great job, Max. The high school core Christmas concert is Monday, December 18th at 7 p.m. at the high school. Congratulations to Captain of the Month at North, Chris Deegan. Chris has taken over the Michigan Junior Honor Society at North and has done a great job. She mentors some of our new teachers and takes photos at events at Middle School North's yearbook. Points of pride this month for me is Thomas Westfall, such an incredible athlete to watch over the past few years. He won the Foot Locker Cross Country Championship regional title in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and was able to advance to the national championship in San Diego, California. He was the first Anchor Bay student to compete since 1983 and was one of 2 Michigan runners where he placed 31st overall. Thomas, congratulations on all your accomplishments here at Anchor Bay. Thank you.
One that you actually left off was during the Anchor Bay football banquet. Our team partnered with the United States Marines for Toys for Tots. They collected 143 toys that were able to be, distributed. My point of pride, Mr. Richards mentioned the comfort closet. There's a lot more in my comment. Is my point of pride is what our teachers and our staff are doing. We get these personnel reports and things, and we have things added like the comfort closet and what Ms. Petron and the counseling department is doing and the donors. I know there was a post today from Ms. Petron, just this overwhelming support. So we have a great community for that. But I also see things on our personnel report, like people being added for chess enrichment and woodworking enrichment and welding. And we have all these people. I know a couple of years ago, Mr. Jankowski at what we call opening day, opened up to the teachers and the staff and said, hey, if you guys have any ideas, bring them to me. Let's do them. And they're really, I'm seeing more and more as they're getting kind of comfortable with this, this new dynamic in the district. They're really stepping up and bringing some really cool things to our students and our families. So I just want to thank all of our teachers and staff for going above and beyond and finding more great things about Anchor Bay to do.
I will, adding to that, I had the opportunity last night, I was at Great Oaks for the fifth grade music concert. And tonight I was picking one of my kids up from the high school for the middle school choir that's practicing for their performance, which is Thursday and Friday at 7:00 of Moana Junior. But my point of pride would be all of our new staff this year. I've had a lot of opportunities to, see different things throughout the district. For example, last night, the Great Oaks music production for the fifth grade, our music teacher in that building is a first-year teacher. I know the choir teacher at Middle School North. This is her first year in Anchor Bay, coming from New York. And to Ms. Knox's point, people, they're jumping in, setting the bar. And, despite the challenges that being a first year, whether you're a first year teacher or even just your first year in a district, brings a lot of change, new curriculum, new colleagues, new community. And these people are going out of their way and on their own time after hours to kind of add more to the district for our kids. So I want to thank them for that. And I know that Ms. Curvin and Mr. Woods are not the only ones. Those were the two that I happened to see in the last 2 days. But so I want to thank all of our new staff.
I have a couple of points of pride. First one, the JROTC selling Goodfellows newspapers. Just an awesome job. The conditions were definitely questionable. On the Saturday they were there was maybe 25, 28 of them. And they were all over town and, businesses and places that we considered safe to put our high school students. I was not in one of those safe spots. I always seem to end up in the middle of Green Street at Washington. I apparently think I can dodge vehicles, so that's where I get assigned. But the rain was difficult. The Goodfellows was substantially short of hitting their goal and ran the sale for a second weekend because the weather was so bad the first weekend that people weren't out, people weren't donating, certainly weren't feeling jovial. So, and then my second interaction actually was with the middle school kids at the New Baltimore tree lighting. We had a choir out there, an abbreviated version of the choir, maybe 12 or 15 of them. It's always great to hear them out in front of the tree before the tree gets lit, before Santa comes down Washington. So I appreciate them kicking off the holidays a couple of Mondays ago.
My point of pride was going to be the ROTC also. It's just amazing all the positive stuff they do in the community. And I know I'm only speaking probably to the one kid that's up listening to the board meeting, but if you are, go out and get involved in something. Anchor Bay offers so much. Get involved in the ROTC, get involved in the archery club, get involved in the bowling, the sports. It's you never know what you're gonna love and what it's gonna change in your life. So that's all I got.
All right, I just want to apologize again to the board, the rest of you guys, and to the residents. I haven't been at many meetings this past year. Just was involved in a lot of other things. Wasn't taking my eye off the district at all or not being involved. I was still talking to parents and talking to actually our CT director, help get some skilled trades to the skilled trades fair we had here. And another thing, because I'm on the Lake Superior State Board of Trustees and on the Macomb County Workforce Board. And in both those places, like, again, probably getting involved in too much, but a lot of it's revolving around getting these young people into careers, not just the trades being one of the big ones that obviously I'm ingrained in, but in multiple different areas. And I was just last week, and I want to talk to Phil after the meeting with the Macomb St. Clair Workforce Board. They're doing a lot of good things, like a lot of grants to bring, you might already be talking to them too, but they're heavily involved near the Warren area. And I'd like to bring them out here into our district to help our students with career prep. And there's just a lot of money there, as you were talking about tonight, I'm sure you know. And then when it comes to the colleges, on that Lake State Board, we talked to a lot of the other universities throughout the state. and getting these kids into, careers in, and in apprenticeships and in even multitude of things. So, trying to be that facilitator and bring my knowledge to that table and bring it here. So again, it's not good when you don't show up. I appreciate you guys reaching out and taking that step last meeting. I needed it, a little kick in the butt. So I'll take that and continue to work hard for the residents of Anchor Bay and for the students. So that's what it's all about. I will say the point of pride that Thomas Westfall, I would like to see us bring him here. I will say he's my cousin's son, so that there's a little bit of a family connection there, but he's just done so much. It seems like every time I turn around, he's breaking another record, doing another thing that's never been done. The kid found we always thought he was going to be a soccer player. Now he's this cross country star, and he just got I don't know if you heard, he's got a full ride to Michigan State and just doing great. So I think it'd be cool to bring him here and bring multiple when people, I'm sure there's more that I don't know about. Bring them to the school board to recognize them in front of whoever's here. So, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to, well, thanks for being here, Mr. Drew. I certainly, I value your input, so I'm glad that, we decided to, be here today. And then I, hope to continue to see you provide the input that you do as someone who's as involved in the trades as you are, and overseeing projects and whatnot. It's, I think, invaluable to have your input on as well as we go through the budgeting and whatnot. Points of pride, I'd like to just acknowledge the administration staff we have here to go through the process, to sign up for grants, even the competitive ones, to allow us to have a little more flexibility in our budget to do things we want to do and provide compensation for those who feel like we need to have that compensation. I think it's a definite added bonus. And it is the holiday season. So for those of you out there, if we don't talk, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and, have fun.
Next item is the legislative update, but
Well, not much there, but speaking of everybody's second favorite season, it is starting budget season at the state. So January 12th, they'll have the first consensus revenue estimating. So I'm going to put that on your calendars. I'll be watching. So that begins the cycle of preparing for the following year's budget and all of that, now that we have our amended budget. So we'll start getting a sense of where that's at. Other than that, again, I don't know if they'll be in session, at least in the House, until after the two special elections are up. And then, so we won't expect anything to be passed until at least then. So.
okay. And board committee updates. I know Finance Committee met, Building Committee met. Does anybody from those committees wish to speak?
Yeah, the building committee was just basically what we went over tonight. So.
Yeah.
Us, the finance too, we met this week and discussed and had questions about everything that was presented tonight. So I don't think there's really anything new that you guys correct me if I'm wrong if I missed something, but I think we covered it.
I think those were the only two. All right, next item is closed session. So accept a motion to go into closed session pursuant to item 8H of the Open Meetings Act.
I'll make a motion.
Support.
Go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Moses?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Berkmeyer?
Yes.
Mr. Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Vendatelli?
Yes.
Mr. DeRue?
Yes.
Ms. Knox? Yes.
All right, closed session begins at 8:23.
What's wrong with you?
Motion to go back into session. and adjourn.
Okay. I will accept a motion to return to the meeting at 9:33.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. So I will entertain a motion coming out of closed session regarding a foreign exchange contract.
I'll make the motion to authorize the superintendent to enter negotiations with China Link LLC for the purposes of bringing students over from China beginning our next school year.
Second.
Further discussion? Ms. Knox?
Mr. Green,
No.
Mr. DeRue,
Yes.
Mr. Vendatelli,
No.
Mr. Moses,
Yes.
Mr. Richards,
Yes.
Ms. Berkmeyer,
No.
Ms. Knox, yes.
All right, motion passes. I will accept a motion or, yeah, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned, 9:34.